We weren't on any psychedelics or anything. Like this was just an experience with stone and light. You just realize that this is magic. All of this together creates this magic that we can't explain, but we can feel it in our bodies. And because we're so busy running around in our human lives, we just forget how magical everything is around us.
Welcome, tribe. I'm Mayah Rose.
And I'm Gerald Rogers. We're about to embark on another mind-expanding episode where we dive deep into the realms of psychedelics, sex, and the superconscious.
This is a transformational experience of healing, manifestation, increased clarity, flow, and alignment.
So join us on this sacred journey as we receive the codes of transformation from scientists and psychonauts, shamans, tantra masters, mystics, and more.
Together, we'll unravel the secrets of plant medicine, sex magic, and other tools to tap into higher states of consciousness.
So why are we here? To answer the call, to share our passions and be advocates for alternative healing.
So get ready for a ride that transcends the ordinary and leads you to the extraordinary, because living a legendary life is not just a choice.
It's a sacred adventure.
Welcome back to Psychedelic Sex and the Superconscious Tribe. I'm so excited today. I have with me my dear friend and one of my very favorite people in the whole entire world. In fact, she's the person that I chose to go to Egypt with, Melissa Tittl. She was co-producer of Ancient Aliens, Ancient Apocalypse, head of Gaia TV forever. She just launched Joe Dispenza's documentary Source, won several awards for it, and also has this amazing documentary out on Amazon Prime called Code 12. And it was for all these reasons and also getting to know her that I finally said yes to going to this pilgrimage to these sacred sites in Egypt. So, Melissa, just really excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this.
Yeah. And, on this podcast, I really want to just talk about this mystical journey that we had to Egypt, why we decided to do it, why you set it up the way that you did, because I thought it was so beautifully done. And I think it was so different. So we spent 2 weeks in Egypt visiting, I think, 18 sacred sites in 12 days. We had privates at many of these sites. We had our own private yacht with a whole crew. We had such a phenomenal experience, and it's so different than what I thought it was going to be or what some of the other trips that I've heard about before. And I just really wanted to dive into why we decided to do this, the way that you structured it, why you structured it in this way, and then talk about some of these sacred sites and also the machine of the Great Pyramids. So first of all, to get started, I would love for you to share your experience in Egypt and why you even started Hathor Studios in the first place.
The big question first. You're supposed to build up to this, Mayah Rose.
I know. We're just going to go deep right off the bat.
Okay. All right, fine. All right. So just a little, like she said, a little bit of background about me. I worked in mainstream for a long time. So I've worked for History Channel, Discovery Channel, Netflix, several other networks. And then I left and became head of content for Gaia. I was that for 5.5 years. And then I created Hathor Studios. And throughout my career writing about ancient civilizations and different parts of Egypt and different ancient structures and all that kind of stuff, I've been to Egypt many times. And my last trip to Egypt, which was about 4 years ago, before this trip that we're about to talk about on here, I had an experience in Hathor's temple, which I can't explain. Now, I love the unexplained. I've been writing about it for 20 years, but I still, as a journalist, try to deduct things in a way that I'm using both sides of my brain. I never want to say that it's the supernatural or it's aliens or it's gods or goddesses, but then I don't want to say that it's not, because at some point when you're a researcher, you can't necessarily define everything. So I leave it open. So I had an experience. I was walking around. It was July in Egypt. I don't know if anybody's been to Egypt on this podcast, but July is a god-awful month to go to Egypt. It is 120 degrees respectively. It is not pleasant. Anyway, I was in the Temple of Hathor. I was pretty dead because it was so hot. There wasn't a lot of people in there. And I wanted to walk around. I was actually with Graham Hancock and his wife. And I was with a Egyptologist. And I said, I just want to walk around by myself and take some time. I love this temple. And there is a great hall when you walk in. And then there's a Holy of Holies. And around the Holy of Holies is 13 rooms. And in one of those rooms, I just was drawn to it. There's nothing in it but hieroglyphs. There's no statues. There's no artifacts. I just was like, I want to go to that room. And I felt drawn to put my hands on the stone in one of the walls. And then all of a sudden I put my head in between my hands for some reason. I don't know why I was doing this, but I decided to do it. And then as I did that, I felt all of this emotion come through my body. Like if you could imagine every single emotion in the universe all at once, all the time, everywhere, inside your body. It was insane. It was insane. And then I felt all these colors come through my body, or I was seeing colors come through my body. And I lifted my hands up in my head, and I was just staring at this wall like this, like with my hands up, like, what happened? Now, here's the crazy part. I know that sounds like it was a crazy part, but it was not the crazy part. The crazy part was the Egyptologist that we were with comes around the corner and says, "Where have you been?" And I said, I was just here, and, I still got my hands up. And he's like, "You've been gone for 2 hours." I was missing for 2 hours. And they were freaking out because they thought obviously something terrible had happened to me. So I had some kind of missing time experience. And he comes up and he's like, "Do you know what that says?" And I said, "No." He says, "It says, 'Receive the goddess here.'" And I can't read hieroglyphs. Well, I mean, after that, I was like, I need to know exactly what all of these hieroglyphs say. But at that moment in time, I could not read hieroglyphs. And for some reason, I was drawn to that moment. And I had this experience. Now, that experience changed my life because every night I would have a dream where I'm going to define it as this energy. This energy would bring me back to the temple. It would be at night, and the hieroglyphs would come out of the walls, and they would turn blue, and they would turn into calculations. And to this day, I have no idea what they mean. All I know is that what it was trying to communicate to me was that there was something so magical there that I just couldn't understand. And it was codes and keys to the universe that I could have access to if I was able to tap into that energy and really understand it. And this blew my mind that I eventually left Gaia. I started Hathor Studios because I wanted the company of Hathor Studios to only make content that embodied this frequency, this energy that was the complete understanding of the universe. And it was outside of the calculations and the understanding of the universe that we know right now. I wanted to create something that was going to bring back that frequency that I feel like we have lost. And I found it very ironic. Again, I'm pretty pragmatic in my writing and my understanding, but I found it really ironic that I've been to all these temples, and the only one that I had an experience at like that was at Hathor's temple, which is a feminine temple. And I thought, well, what a good place to hide all the secrets of the universe if for like 6,000 plus years you wanted to keep it under wraps, because nobody was looking for it there. Until recently, I see a couple more people posting about, Hathor technology and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that changed my life. And when I decided to design this trip, I wanted to give that experience to, we had 19 people on this trip, right? 19 people.
Yeah.
I wanted to give that experience to 19 people. Now, but remember, 19 people are not going to have an experience like that in Hathor's temple, because all those 19 people have completely different DNA and completely different experiences and have different realities that they need to be in touch with. So I wanted these people to have that opportunity to be in touch with something that needed to come back to their soul. And so to do that, I needed to create something where they had a lot of alone time within these temples so that they could feel how powerful these temples were, and they could figure out what that piece was that connected to them. And it was all different places. And so that was kind of, I know I jumped into 20 questions all at once, but that's how I started the company. That is how I've driven the vision of the company and the content we make. But then on this trip, I just wanted to offer that experience to those 19 people to see if there was something that needed to come back to them.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And I wanted you to start with that experience because for me, I know I've been invited to go to Egypt many times before and it just hasn't felt quite right. And when you shared that story of what happened in Hathor Temple, there was this like little seed planted in me, like this desire, like, oh, Melissa gets it, like on the level that I am resonating with right now. And she's the one that I want to go with. And there was this feeling of, for me, like you understood the power of the temples, like the resonance that they hold there, but you also are honoring everybody's journey there. And I love the space we created and I'll let you talk about that in just a moment for people to explore and look around and feel and experience because these ancient temples, this ancient knowledge, there's something different. And you said it so well. Everybody's DNA is coded different. I know that the ultimate message that I got there, the awakening and the remembrance that I had on that journey I went on was very specific and unique to me. But the way that the trip was curated allowed for that spaciousness. And so there was just, and this is something that I really feel about you, Melissa. And I know I've said this before. There's this saying that Gerald and I say at a lot of our seminars and with the people we work with, and that is information is cheap, but transformation is priceless. And there's the information like, oh, this is when the temple was built, and this is who it was built for, this is what this hieroglyph means or says. But then there's this like element of transformation, which can only be experienced in those moments of listening, of experiencing, instead of just, looking or seeking for the information. So I really love that. And I want to fast forward now. So after hearing that experience, you and I talked a little bit. We're like, oh, let's do this. This will be really fun. And started curating the group of people to go. And for me, I knew I've led lots of groups to many different sites before and even sacred sites around the world. And my philosophy has always been like, I go before, I get to know the land, and then the group comes and I kind of introduce them. But I knew Egypt was a whole different beast. And I'm like, okay, I am not qualified. I do not have the experience, the knowledge, anything to be able to really create an experience for a group there. But I knew that you did. And so just leaning into this trust. And it was so beautiful the way that you curated it. And I want you to speak a little bit to this because a lot of people, they just fly in, they see the Great Pyramids, they start there, they kind of go to some of the other temples. But the way that you designed it, it really was a pilgrimage starting at the place of origin. So I'd love for you just to talk about how you designed the trip and the order in which we visited these different sites and temples and then kind of ended with the pyramids, which are the machine.
Awesome. Yeah. So one of the things I feel like as we move into this new age that everybody keeps talking about, Aquarius or astrological signs or whatever it is, I think everybody can agree on this podcast that's listening that we're moving into something. And as we do, intuition is going to be the new science. And I'm explaining this because in my logical part of my mind that I have to use for my job, I've definitely read that the initiation process was started at the very end or the very beginning of the Nile going up, which is in Nubia, the beginning, the origin point. And I have a lot of information to back that up. And we talk about this on the trip a lot of this kind of origin point.
By the way, I want to just hop in here because when you say origin point, I had never experienced the energy of origin. I didn't even think origin could have an energy. But as we started at this specific site, like I felt actually what origin feels like, what beginning feels like. So anyway, continue on.
So there's stuff written about that, and there's also archaeology evidence of kind of like the beginning of what we would call Egyptian spirituality at this origin point that we start at. We don't. Everybody flies into Cairo, and we don't do the regular tour where everybody does the pyramids and then gets on a flight. Literally the next morning, you're in Nubia, and we start the journey from the original origin point of Egyptian spirituality. And then we learn about all the points of the universe before we get to the pyramid. But whether that's true or not, some archaeologists will argue with me that that's not necessarily true. I mean, nobody can. There's lots of arguments about how old the pyramid is, and that could be way older than the origin cults that are in Nubia, that are the basis for Egyptian spirituality. But intuition-wise, The journey through your heart and your soul first, learning all these pieces from the temple that are coming back to you before you arrive in Cairo and the Giza Plateau, I think is so important. And the reason I think it's so important is that because we are in this body as humans, and the way that we understand our world and our communication with other humans is through story. And what the temples provide are these creation stories, the understanding of the universe through story and sound and feeling of the rocks. So we can't really get into our bodies and our soul if we don't have all those, 11 temple experiences on the Nile before you get to the Giza Plateau, which for the most part, besides some places that have hieroglyphs, it's like a machine. It's just rock and hard. There's not symbols anywhere except for a couple of them that have a couple markings, like Unas, which is on the Giza Plateau, and Menakare has some markings. But other than that, you're just in a machine. You're literally in a machine. And so for you to prime yourself to have an experience that you're supposed to be using your human body with another kind of machine, which is also seems natural but man-made, you need to go through those experiences. And that was the most important thing for me. It wasn't just to hit all the spots. A lot of tours, it's about hitting all the spots. It's like, okay, well, the easiest thing to do is to do this, and then you do that, and then I'll show you some stuff over here, and then we go here, and wow, that was really cool, and ooh, yeah, that's really neat. But I mean, less is more, and it doesn't mean that we did less, because we didn't. I mean, Mayah Rose can vouch for this. We did a lot, but. And I think even on anybody listening to this podcast that's done any psychedelic journeys or any kind of healing work on themselves, I mean, where do you start? You start with your story. You start with your heart, right? You open that up, and so this is what that journey is. And I think Abu Simbel is this place that doesn't seem. This is the beginning, right? In Nubia, it's so unnatural. It's like, where are we? There's not a tree anywhere. There's not a piece of grass. You're on like this rocky plateau. It's filled with gold and turquoise and copper. And this is the land of the gods. And here is the beginning of understanding where we came from, why we're here, and what are we doing here. And this, and Mayah Rose, I'm so glad that you felt that way. But I love that bottom of Aswan. I love Abu Simbel. I love the feeling I feel at the gates of those gods, which is Ramses mostly, because that's what Abu Simbel represents. But just the magnificence of it is this kind of entryway into how magnificent you are as a being.
I love that so much. And this idea of this journey. So first of all, being in Abu Simbel and feeling that origin point was so important in awakening and inspiring this part of me that's a creator, because it was a reminder, this feeling that everything starts at the origin, at the beginning, at the nothingness. And that was really what I experienced and felt there. And the other thing that was super miraculous was there's nothing around. There's maybe some little houses of people that work there. I mean, you fly and you hit it just right. There's like absolute desert, nothingness. But they had boba. And I was really thankful for that at the little shop outside. So it's, those of you who know me know that I love boba. So I was like, wait, they have boba even at the origin point. There's something significant here. But what I really loved and appreciated about that journey, and even just for me, again, we visited so many sites. I'm not going to talk about all of them here, but some of the ones that were significant starting at this origin point, and then I think a day later, we had the opportunity to go to the temple at Philae, which is Isis's temple. And I was so thankful because you had worked tirelessly to arrange for us to have a private there, which means it was just our group. We weren't around a bunch of tourists. We woke up at 3:30 a.m. We sailed on this boat. It was still dark. You could see this temple beginning to light up. And the most extraordinary thing that happened, one of the most extraordinary things that happened to me there, and I want to touch on this because you brought this up. There were two significant things that came up for me. So the most significant thing is when I touched this altar. So it was dark. We landed. We is still in the dark, walked through this temple of Isis and went to this inner chamber and really got to touch this granite stone. And what I learned there was that the stones actually hold a frequency and a memory in these ancient temples. And like over and over again, what I felt in these temples and from these stones was there was this ancient wisdom. And the other thing that became really obvious to me in that temple was the importance of sound frequency. So it was like, even when you explain that you touch those stones in Hathor Studios, there's something about these sites that, as we were just allowed to experience them on our own, that it was like when I touched the stone on that altar, I got so much information and so much remembrance about who I was that I could spend 10 hours talking about it, but I got it in 10 seconds just by being in that spot. And then, getting the opportunity to experience the sound resonance or frequency in the inner part of that chamber, I also realized that it is sound that is universal. And one of the things that for all of you listening, that Melissa had us do before the trip, and this was a life changing for me, a game changer for me and many people on the event, was you really had us figure out what the sound resonance of our names were, without the consonants. So we each came in with this different understanding of a vibrational frequency of who we are and got to bring that to these sites. But also at this temple of Isis, for me on this journey, we had just been to this origin point. We got to see the sunrise there. And what I really felt like was this going from the dark night of the soul into this rebirth or dawn of a new day, which is so powerful, and really felt that remembrance also and that understanding at that altar at Isis's temple.
Yeah, that was pretty special. I arriving to an island with the Temple of Isis by boat at night with just the flashlights that we had and our phones, right? And so quiet. There's a bunch of birds flying around. That was it. It's just nothing that compares to that. And having all of you kind of be in there with your heart is just so cool. I was like giddy because I was like, oh, I wonder who's going to have an experience here. See what happens. And then, as Mayah Rose said, the sun coming up over the water, over the temples, and receiving the sun god Ra at this magical temple. It's, I think we forget because we're so busy running around in our human lives, we just forget how magical everything is around us. And when you're in a place like this and you're sort of forced, this is the only thing that you're focused on, you just realize, we weren't on any psychedelics or anything. Like this was just an experience with stone and light. And like she said, the frequency of the stones. And you just realize that this is magic. All of this together creates this magic that we can't explain, but we can feel it in our bodies. And returning back to that is just such a, like, that's the welcoming home. I think we forget that we have the ability to touch this magic all the time, but we are too busy dealing with other things. So it's great to take 11, 12 days to just feel how powerful we all are and be reminded of that within the temples.
Yeah. And, along this journey too, I kind of want to speak a little bit to my journey, and then would love to just dive deeper into the why of some of these things that have happened and how to really experience the temples. But, coming in for me, I tried to let go of expectations. Like one of the things that I believe is so true, Bruce Lee said, the usefulness of the cup is in its emptiness. And one of the things I really appreciated in each temple you had designed, and we were given the time and space to really listen and to experience the energy and the feeling of the temple. And for me, I had known there was a journey for me around the Ankh, which represents life or the feminine. And so going into these different temples, one of the other really incredible experiences for me. And also I want to note that we had this yacht, and we were floating on the Nile, and it felt to me like we would go into these temples and have these experiences. And, for some people, it was more intense at one temple than another. And one of the things I noticed was some of the men on the trip had maybe some more intense experiences at the more masculine temples, and the women kind of had some maybe more intense experience at the feminine temples. But to go back on the yacht and be on the Nile, it was almost like this way of just neutralizing everything. And to be on this like beautiful yacht with a crew of 65, and there were 21 of us, but to immediately go on the Nile, it was like this energy of water just allowing and cradling us as we integrated our experiences we had there. So I loved that experience. But one other experience that really was profound for me along this journey was at Karnac. So one of the sacred sites we visited was Karnac. And even before then, by the way, after the Isis temple at Philae, we were able to go to a temple. What was that temple called, Melissa? The crocodile temple?
Cumbo.
Yeah, Cumbo. And I loved how you did this too, because Cumbo was all about like releasing our fears. So what fears are we feeding to the crocodile? So having these intentions at the temple was so beautiful. But a couple of days later, we then got to go to Karnak, which took like 2,000 years to build. And there's this statue there of Sekhmet, which is one of the Netars or goddesses that represents what is like defense and aid, like helping people. And one of the things that you had,
warrior goddess.
Yeah, warrior goddess. And it's crazy because it's one of the only places that has like the original stone statue and it's housed in this part of the temple. And you had arranged for us to have a private experience there. But not only that, we each got to go in one by one and have a moment with this giant granite statue of Sekhmet. And what I really loved is the intentionality of the trip. And one of the things that you had said was going into this is everybody, think of one thing that you want to ask protection for or help with. And so to be prepared to approach this energy of Sekhmet with this question. And so I'll never forget, because we entered into this courtyard of her temple and we were all kind of being quiet, like this reverent feeling. And one by one, we got to go in and we walked in and there was like a big dark room. And then off to the side, there was another dark room, but there was a skylight. I remember I was the third or fourth to go. And when I walked in, there was this light shining on this lion goddess's face. And she was about, 7 feet tall on her platform and looking up at her. And just remembering this like question that came through for me and this feeling of like, yeah, I'm going to help you with that. And immediately just tears started streaming down my face. And I remember after my time with her going back out into the courtyard and just feeling something that I'd never felt before. And it's really this energy of who Sekhmet was. And that was such a profound experience for me. And I think for everybody there. And what I really want to acknowledge you in this is like, that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't had that individual private moment. And so that was really special. I don't know if you want to say anything about Sekhmet, but it was like this whole journey. Like we're at Origin, and then we're at Isis. It's like dark night of the soul, and then the sun coming up, and then we're at Cumbo, releasing our fears, and now we're standing in front of Sekhmet, like asking for, what we need assistance from this warrior goddess. So I don't know if you have anything to say about that or that part of the journey, but that was just amazing and impactful for me.
Yeah, Sekhmet's pretty powerful. A lot of people have like a adverse reaction, like she's too much or too powerful, and but she is just. And another thing we should point out is that she's in this dark room. There's this tiny sliver, like I guess it's a skylight. It's barely a skylight. It's just like comes down. It's like it looks like a movie lit it because there's just the stream of light and it's dark and you can barely see her outline, but you know that there's like a lion staring at you in the darkness. And she has these intense eyes. So she is totally covered and she is hot to touch. She is boiling hot, which it doesn't make any sense because she's not in the sun. And this is like in the morning. It was like 6 a.m. and she was like on fire. And a lot of people said that they felt this energy, like this fire almost come through their body and like heal their heart. I heard somebody say, and for me, because I had been there many times and had conversations with Sekhmet, my job was to just kind of hold the door and make sure everybody had like 30 seconds to a minute to kind of have just a moment with Sekhmet. But what was so beautiful was I got to witness everybody having this experience with this energy. And it was just so beautiful. It was just, I felt I felt like a guard, like I was guard. I was like a gateway god, like Anubis or something. I was like at the gateway, like holding the boats back, for just a second, so that you could have this moment. It was so profound. It was really profound, and each person had something different that they had to experience. And I mean, that's kind of what I was saying at the beginning, was each temple had some piece for other people. Oh, one thing, you started to explain it, but I wanted to explain that I've been doing a lot of work with sound, and I have a really strong belief that a lot of these ancient places, whether you're in Egypt or Peru or wherever, it's not about what you believed before you got there. Is what you were saying, like, the usefulness of the cup is in its emptiness. And so really honoring that by not bringing other scripture and thoughts that you think need to be heard in this temple. But the one thing that you can do is say your name in all vowels. And that's something I've been working on, as like the consonants of words disconnect us in language, but the vowels of something connect us to that greater purpose. So in all of these places, I wanted people to find those vowels of their name and be able to say that to themselves or out loud, but in a way that felt that they were speaking to the divine, but without all the things that have been written for the last thousands of years. That you came in with saying, "Here is who I am. Who are you?" Instead of, "Please tell me who I am," which is a totally different conversation with energies, because sometimes energies aren't always going to give you the answer that you need.
Yeah. Well, and the most extraordinary thing happened in my personal experience. I found myself walking through many of these temples humming the frequency of the vowels of my name. And you hit it right on the head. As I did that, it was almost this way of introducing my frequency into the space. And then this asking or openness to receive, like, what is my frequency calling for to receive here? What is it that the frequency, here's Mayah Rose, like, what's the frequency that she needs to receive here? And it was phenomenal, just the different experiences I had just walking around the temples and humming and and the way that you curated the trip, it was like enough information for us to understand the energy of the temple, but then enough spaciousness for us to experience what that meant for us as individuals. And
Yeah.
that was really, really powerful to be able to experience that.
I mean, I don't want to, I'll just say some people, mostly guys, only a couple maybe, they do tours in Egypt and they just talk the whole time. I mean, geez, man, I don't know if I want to hear that all the time, but that's sometimes that's people's thing. But I'm just saying, like, it doesn't, it's not what you say. I mean, I could talk forever. I love talking about what is in these temples, but sometimes it's just enough to get people to where they need to be, and then they can figure it out. I just truly believe that. I mean, I think if we start living our lives in a way that our self-expression is not to control the narrative, but our self-expression is to allow for expansion, not only in ourselves but in others, we are heading in the right direction for our civilization. And I really truly believe that with even this trip, was that I just really enjoyed watching you guys all get that. And, we would talk about it, and we had some amazing integrations and meditations on the boat to kind of ground all of that. But it was so amazing to just see all of you get that, and we didn't need to talk about it. Everyone was like, whoa, in their own way. That was just so cool. It just blew my mind. I could be giddy about that forever.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I first personally felt called to go with you and to curate the group, because you just did such a fantastic job. To me, it felt like this divine mother energy of where it was creating the container and giving just enough information and prompts, and then allowing the space for everybody to have their experience. And so I thought that was so beautiful. And I mean, just some of the other experiences for me, it was like being in the Temple of Horus and really understanding the energy of what it means to have knowledge or wisdom, or being in Hathor's temple and really feeling this joy and pleasure, and how that it aids in creation and in our energy as human beings, how we can harness that and use that. And the beautiful depictions on the wall there of Osiris and Isis, and this, her dedication, devotion to him. And then, it was such a contrast between that and then the tombs, which was like a really intense energy. So
Yeah.
that was
Melissa got her butt kicked a little bit. But I was very busy doing all the things to make sure everybody had a seamless trip. But that was where I kind of got a new download, and it was very intense. But yeah, it was pretty cool. Speaking of that, like one of the other things, and I think you can back me up on this. Yeah, and maybe it's just from where I come from. Like I'm from the Midwest, and it's all about hospitality. It's about, overfeed people and make them feel really good and safe and all of that. And I told the people in Egypt that I'm like, these are Americans. They have to eat every 2 hours. So you have to have like food and snacks. And, there was a little pushback on that at first, but then they're like, okay, she's serious. They're really hungry every 2 hours. And it was actually really funny, because if you left your room to just go out and go to the deck or go to the pool or anything like that, and you came back, there'd be like a platter of cheese and fruit, or like homemade granola bars that were like healthy. Like it was like they were like so afraid, because I put this fear of God into them that if they didn't eat every 2 hours, like something was going to happen to them. But the thing with that is that when you know that you're safe, that you got everything taken care of, that you're having this experience, you're having not only the experience of this luxury, but you feel so taken care of, you are going to have a extremely more productive experience spiritually, because you can relax. You know that everything's going to be okay. And, some of the other, when we're not on the yacht, we stayed at a couple other hotels that were my absolute favorite. One of them is the old Karnac in Aswan, which used to be where the royal family would stay. And, Agatha Christie wrote a novel there overlooking the, it's just like so romantic. It's like early 1900s. It's beautifully redone. It's like that whole, like you feel like you're in a movie just for a moment before you got to get your adventure clothes on and like head to the next spot. So all of that is so important. I mean, it's like curating the trip is like making a movie for me. It's like, what are the experiences we're going to have? How are you going to feel when you get to your room and you have those 20,000 granola bars you didn't eat from the beginning of the trip because they're still there. No.
Well, like I love what you're saying, because it kind of goes back to this idea of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow was this psychologist in the 1940s and kind of developed this hierarchy of needs. And in order for us as humans to reach this space of transcendence, right, to really understand, to transcend our experience as we know it and to receive something new, we have to have these like basic human needs met. And there was never a moment where I wondered if I was safe, if I was going to have food, where I was going to stay, what I was going to do. And what I realized was that allowed me to go so much deeper into the experience and to feel safe in the integration of it. So I really, really loved that component of it. And for anybody that's going to travel to Egypt or any of these sacred sites, having those things taken care of, especially when you're in a foreign country, especially when you're dealing with different food standards, perhaps if you're going to go out and eat at a local restaurant, you could get sick,
Yeah, you do not want to get sick. No.
Yeah. So I really loved that about the trip. And for me, I think another thing I want to bring up too is the power of going when you feel called. Like there was this moment for me before so this was really cool. We had a private at the Great Pyramid on the Giza Plateau, just our group, instead of thousands of people, just our group in the Great Pyramid. And the day before, I realized it was going to be on the full moon, maybe subconsciously planned, but not consciously. And there was this moment riding the bus on the way there where I just had this feeling, like almost overcome with this feeling of, this is where you're supposed to be right now. You are supposed to be in this pyramid on the full moon on May 12th. And every point in your life has led up to this, and this is a significant moment. And so my heart was so full of gratitude for that. And then the other thing that kept coming to me too was just the group that we were with, like at Isis's temple and then the pyramid too. It was like, this is the group of people and the time you're supposed to be going. And I really think there's value in that. When you feel called to go somewhere, like
Yeah.
there's a code that you're supposed to receive or that you're supposed to activate there, or who knows how you want to say it, but it's divine timing. And when you answer that call, you will be blessed for that. And then the divinity of the people that were in our group and how they helped each other. And I'll just mention this because that really led me to this moment in the Great Pyramid. The first thing you did was, we shut off the lights and we were in meditation for the first 30 minutes. And as I sat in meditation, I could feel, and I remembered all these hieroglyphs and all these temples, and Hatshepsut was one of them, but of the divine masculine and feminine, and all these codes I'd seen. And I felt this remembrance within me that is why I was there, to remember that I had that within me. And also, in my relationship with Gerald. And it was so significant because I realized that I was in one of the 7 wonders of the world, that I journeyed all this way around the world, that, I felt called to go with you, which you set up the trip perfectly, and the right people were there. And it was this moment to remember that, what the pyramids really stand for is, how do we achieve this eternal life, or this, super conscious activation, or whatever you want to call it. And what was activated within me was the remembrance that I already had everything, that I was exactly where I needed to be. And I already had the wisdom within me to reach this eternal life, to access the super conscious. And I felt it activated in every cell of my body. And later on, when I laid in the sarcophagus and had some people doing some toning and singing notes above me, I could feel it moving through me and almost like out my chest. But it was such a significant moment for me because I realized I never would have known that or understood that unless I went on the journey, the way it was curated, to all the sacred sites, to have these experiences, to feel what I felt there, to be in this machine at this moment on the full moon, to remember that I was the code that I've been looking for. Even now I get like really emotional about it because that to me was such a significant moment in my life. And I'm just really, really grateful for the journey that led up to that, and for the way that you designed and had us experience everything so that I could be there in that moment at that time. So anyway, thank you for that. I didn't know I was going to get all emotional on this podcast, but just came out.
I wish I could come through this podcast and give you a hug. I'm going to give you a virtual hug right now with these weird, creepy hands. I had a moment in the pyramid too. I think because it was the end of the trip and I was like, oh my God. Anyway, it was profound. I don't think I have the words yet. I think there's a moment on the plane when I was going back, because you and I both had to leave really early, going on different planes, but I was on the plane and I thought to myself, what just happened? Like, what just happened? And it wasn't like a bad or a good thing. It was just like, whoa, what just happened? Because I felt so different, and I'm still piecing back what those things are exactly that came back to me. But that's the beauty of going someplace like that. It's not really trying to define things. It's just living in that new truth.
Yeah, and I love that. And I just want to I want to pick your brain a little bit on that too, because it felt to me like after going on this journey and having these experiences, like it did feel like the pyramid was like this, somehow this machine that activated something. And we got a really beautiful experience earlier that day where we got to go below the pyramids and see some sarcophaguses. But what is your take on the pyramids, and why do you think like that was allowed for such a profound moment in there for both me and you and so many people on the trip?
Well, I think it has to do with, there's two types of technology. There's man-made technology, even if it's natural, meaning, structures and pyramids and all that kind of stuff. Man-made technology to harness different energies of the earth. And then there's our own biological technology that I'm sorry, we are not good at understanding. Like the people listening to this podcast have probably done a lot of research and work on themselves and understand a little bit more than maybe others, but still we know this much of how our body is this amazing piece of technology that interacts with all energies of the universe all the time. I think the ancient man knew that and created then on top of it these machines. I really believe that. I feel like Giza Plateau to me is just a massive machine. It's just a huge hotbed of energy, and they put a bunch of pyramids and structures on them to harness all that energy. You can go into the power plant situation where you can go into that theory, or you could go into the magnification of spirituality and using magnifying the human biology technology. So I think that when you're in these places, they're each coded differently. They're coded differently to a different energy that hits a different point of your DNA. They're connected to different star systems specifically, so that those energies are also pulled into something with this huge amount of rock that holds all these memories. So you're not only, it's not necessarily, I feel in the Giza Plateau that the pyramids are not necessarily holding memories of humans, even though there's been a lot of humans in there meditating. It's mostly holding memories from the earth and the stars at the same time. So if you think about it, if you've done all your work and you finally get to the machine on the Giza Plateau and you are primed and ready and your body is ready to receive, you are receiving all the codes of the planet that you live on and the stars that it's connected to, because all of that is built to bring it all together. And so you have not only different waves of frequency coming to your body, but you have different remembrance of who you are at that moment. And it's so intense. It's just so amazing. But and each temple feels completely different, has a completely different energy. But you're right. Full moon, King's Chamber, totally dark, all of us facing that moment where we're facing ourselves. And oh, it was epic. It's like I can feel it now, like in my heart. Like I can feel like that moment where it was like, whoa, it was intense. And but just think about that. Think about how much we don't know about our bodies and how magnificent they are. And if only our consciousness was at a higher level of understanding, we'd be able to run this amazing technology like no other. But we remember a little bit of it when we go into something so advanced like the Great Pyramid, where it starts to give us back all those codes of the earth and the stars.
Yeah, so beautifully spoken. And just to share a little bit of my experience, and I want to share this in a way that if anybody is going to go to Egypt, please don't take my experience for your experience. Like, leave space to have your own experience. But what I experienced in there was not only the codes being unlocked in me, but I was the code. Like, that's why I was supposed to be there at that time. It was this symbiotic relationship of like things were being unlocked or remembered in me, but also I was there as a remembrance at that specific time because of my unique codes that I carry and my DNA and my structure and my energy field. And it was just such an incredible life-changing experience. And I really want to encourage, if you're listening to this, like really a couple things I want you to get out of it. Number one, answer the call when you feel called to go somewhere. There's like a reason. Make sure that you're really intentional with the group that you're traveling with and the experience that you're going to have, and really pick a group that's going to allow you to have that time and space. And I know, Melissa, we're excited because we want to do some more trips to Egypt. But
Yes.
yeah, it's so important. And most of all, like, really, like, thank you. And I would encourage anybody that's listening, if you haven't seen Code 12 yet, watch it. It's on Amazon Prime. There's some deep information and transformation in there that I think you'll find really valuable.
Amazing. And if you are interested in going to Egypt and you'd like to come, then you can go and fill out an application at www.hathorstudios.com. So that's HATHOR studios.com. And you can fill out an application for the trip for next year.
Yay. And I'll put that in the show notes too. So anyway, thank you so much again, Melissa, for being here. Thank you for who you are and for the detail and everything that you did to curate this beautiful experience in Egypt that was so life-changing for all of us on the trip. And if you're listening to this, thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Tribe. And until next time, I'm Mayah Rose. See you later.